Hey, this is Don from Padlock Technologies again with another video, long-awaited video too. So I've been working on labs. If y'all seen my community stuff, what I've been putting out there, I've been waiting on some Catalyst Center stuff that I've been working on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Catalyst Center. This is going to be a brief overview of Catalyst Center. Not really going to go into a super deep dive because you guys need an overview first before we start getting into the stuff that you can do. Now, let's get the elephant out of the room here. I hear this all the time. People make this assumption, and it's kind of, you shouldn't make it. The assumption is, I'm not doing SDA, which is software defined access, so I don't need Catalyst Center. That could be the furthest from the truth. If you are a Cisco environment and you want to efficiently manage the equipment in your network, you need Catalyst Center, right? Think about it like Prime, right? This is like, I always tell people, this is Prime 2.0 that can do SDA, right? So it's a better version of Prime, and it gives you the ability to do SDA, but you do not need it. You don't need SDA to get Catalyst Center. So don't make that mistake, okay? Now, I also did an interview, and I'm going to put a link in the description below. Go subscribe to his channel, where I talked about how they're trying to automate a lot of the lower level, and I don't like to use the term lower level because I was once that person as well. A lot of the CCNA stuff, they're trying to automate that out, right? Meaning, hey, we don't really need a lot of you guys to do the stuff that Catalyst Center can do with automation. So if you're a CCNA, this is going to force you to really get to go and do a CCNP or do your CCIE or do, go to Juniper and do that stuff. But it doesn't matter what vendor you go to. They're all trying to automate lower level tasks, right? So don't look at Catalyst Center as something that's going to replace you. You got to be smart enough to, get with the times. I suffered from this as well when this first came out. It was known as DDAC before. Use it as a tool to assist you, right? Don't be afraid of it and think it's going to replace you, right? Because they still haven't figured out a way to replace human consciousness, right? Even with all this AI stuff. So if you learn how to use Catalyst Center as a tool to assist you in other things, then you're going to be free to do the higher level tasks where the architecture stuff comes in, because Catalyst Center can't do that, right? You still need this, right? So I'm going to show you the lab right now, and then we're going to jump into the Catalyst Center console, and then we're going to just talk about it a little bit, and then videos that's going to come after that will be more into certain things, how to do things and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and get into the lab right now. All right, so this is the dashboard of Catalyst Center. Now, what I want to do before we get into that, let me show you the lab. So here's the lab. Now, we have two fabrics here, and we have our DNAC appliance here, our Catalyst Center. I just called it DNAC, but it's Catalyst Center now. We have ICE that's got integrated in there for our policy engine piece of SDA, but we're not going to use this for, well, I have SDA, but again, you don't need SDA to use Catalyst Center. But I did a full lab, so I wanted, because I did the SDA piece and I want to show you guys, so I integrated ICE with this. Then we have Nexus Dashboard. I've done a ton of Nexus Dashboard videos. Go check those out, because we have our data center fabric over here that we're managing with Nexus Dashboard. And then we have our campus fabric down here, which is getting managed by Catalyst Center. Now, this would be considered shared resources. And then we have a Fusion router, quote unquote Fusion router. And then we have our WAN block, our internet block over here. Now, what do you not see? I didn't want to blow up my server. I'm probably going to buy another server so I can give you the complete Cisco future architecture here, which is, hey, we're going to use Catalyst Center to manage your campus fabric. We're going to use Nexus Dashboard to manage your data center fabric, or ACI to manage your data center fabric. Then we're going to have the vManage, where we're going to have Cisco SD-WAN manage your WAN. So you're going to have technically, a set of boxes that are going to manage all of this, right? Everything. You're not going to be doing anything on the actual CLI as much as you used to. So in your traditional design, this is going to be a one node cluster for pretty much everything. Now, the reason why you want to do a one node cluster in Catalyst Center is because if you do a standalone, which I suggest you do not, But if you do a standalone and now you want to do a cluster, you basically have to blow out the entire standalone and then redo it, right? So you're going to save yourself a lot of headache if you just if you create a one node cluster, because then you can just add the other two nodes when you're ready to do so, right? Same thing with Nexus Dashboard. vManage, you can do three, but you're usually going to do that when you start talking about multi-tenancy. I did a video on that too, multi-tenancy. Check the channel. Just look in the search box, you'll see multi-tenancy SD-WAN. All right. So with that being said, Catalyst Center, Catalyst Center, Catalyst Center. So this is Catalyst Center in a nutshell. Now, for those of you that probably say, you got it in Eve, and how much this thing is resource intensive. That one box alone, that one little icon you saw in Eve and G-Lab, that is 256 gigs of memory by itself. By itself. So that's why I have a separate server just to host that and a couple other things, right? If you were to buy like a server to put this on, like a VM server or something like that, you would still need about 512 gigs and probably the same in SSD hard drives. You can't do regular like SAS or regular hard drives because it won't allow you to take it, and you need SSDs for it. All right, so that can run you probably like $2,000 if you look on eBay. So now let's talk about from left to right. Now there is a version here. I have not upgraded it yet. I got 2.3.7.9 that I'm running on, and 10 is available, but I'm not really interested in upgrading it. And then we're going to look at the left here with all these menus. Now, when you first start this thing up, it takes forever to start up. None of these options are available as it's starting up. So you have to install certain pieces of software to get certain features. Case in point, if I go to policy here, you first started out, you're only going to see IP and URL based access control. That's what you're going to see when you first start it up. You have to go to software management and install all these other packets to get some of these other features. So now let's start talking about what it looks like. Top down. All right, always remember that. Top down when you get in the Catalyst Center. You got the design. This is where a lot of your heavy lifting is going to be. You have the network hierarchy, network settings, network profiles. This is where you attach templates, and we'll get into templates. Image repository. This is where you can put your gold image or get an image for a certain model of switch and make it the gold image, and then do updates or update anything in your environment that needs to match the gold image. And if you do the PnP process, which is just you got a switch, you plug it into the network, it gets discovered by DNAC. I'm grossly over. I'm not really telling you everything. Just you put the switch in, it gets discovered by DNAC, and you push these templates out to it. And it will also see if it's a part of the image. If it has the golden image of it, if it doesn't, it will automate the update for you. Updating is probably is what I've seen the most people do in Catalyst Center. It's all about scale, right? And this is where my CCNAs out there. So, yeah, you know how to do an upgrade. You can upgrade a box, this, that, and the other. But can you do it at scale, right? You're one person. How many can you do in an hour? Well, with things like these type of tools like Catalyst Center, you can upgrade a bunch of switches in batches that would probably take you a couple days to do, could take Catalyst Center a couple hours. You see what I'm saying? So it's really about scale here when you talk about Catalyst Center. Then you have your CLI templates. This is going to be either a Jinja template, Python, or a Velocity template. I'll get into that in another video. This is where a lot of your automation tasks, hey, do you want to do some type of configuration and you want to push it out to multiple switches or router? Remember, at scale, you're going to use your CLI templates and you can push it out to a bunch of switches. Obviously, you need to test it, push it to one, make sure it works. But once it works with one, you pretty much can just push it out everywhere. So let's get a little deep into it. So here's the hierarchy first, right? So you can break it down to areas and then have sub areas and then have buildings in there. So basically, this is your network hierarchy, and you would do this for your entire organization. So you can have an East Coast, a West Coast, whatever. You just need to have reachability to wherever these devices are. So when you put them in the sites, you can actually reach them, right? But this is just a graphical view of your network. Now, the one caveat here is anything from a network setting standpoint, when we go to network settings, everything is pretty much done in the global, And then anything under global is basically inherited by anything under global. Now you can stop the initial inheritance by going under the specific site you want to go to, and you see with this little look like two orange buttons, you can actually change that, right? You don't have to inherit global settings because not everybody's going to use the settings that you put in global. So if it's, your, DHCP server down here may be a different DHCP server. Your NTP server may be something different. So you can change it from the global settings. Then you have your device credentials. These are going to be your credentials that you're going to use to log in the boxes. You need at least 3 of them. You need a CLI one, you need a SNMP read only, and you need a write. Those are the 3 you're going to need. So you can log in and get, interface information, stuff like that, to push commands down via your template. It needs to log into the box. Now, I will tell you, if you don't have ICE involved, you're going to use the local password. But once you get ICE involved, it's going to have to go and use ICE to. It's basically going to look at ICE and say, okay, I'm going to log in with these credentials, and then after I log in with these credentials, I'm going to get those credentials verified by ICE, and if I can't get it, I'm going to fail. So you got to be careful when you use ICE because now you can't really use the local account to log into your devices, at least from a CLI perspective, from the VTY line perspective, not the console line. Then you got your pools here, and I'm only going to talk about the important pieces here. I'm not really going to get into wireless or telemetry or trust. The pools, this is when you're getting into SDA, right? So you got your global pool, and then you're going to reserve stuff out of that global pool, right? Now, if you see my global pool was a 10/8, but then you see my pools, my multicast pools, my transit pool, which is for my peering, and then my VN or virtual networks, which technically are VRFs. Those pools are in there, right? So you're gonna get your pools and then do your fabric based on these pools. But again, this is SDA. You do not need to do this if you're not doing SDA. All right. And then we have our network profiles. Again, this is really going to be for pushing templates. As you can see, I have one here that says enable password and line con 0, really. And that has to do with a profile that a CLI template that I pushed that's going to change my enable password. So basically, I'll show it to you right now, and then we'll get into it in a deeper video. So here's a template I created. Excuse me. And basically, I said enable secret, gave it a variable, and then the line con was just no exec timeout, so I didn't time out anything there. And I have this variable. The variable is going to be a string variable. And the good part about it, you can even simulate this if you wanted to and see what the configuration would look like before you push it. But again, we're going to save that video about templates in another video. Then you got your image repository, where if I wanted to add an image, I would just import the image here. Let's say I just got it from, Cisco, your own version. This is the gold standard image. I would plug it into here, and then it would look to see what image something was on. If it wasn't a part of the gold standard image, then I would just say update device and go through the whole update workflow. And again, you can do them in batches. You do not have to do all switches at once. This is probably the main feature, which is called SWIM, which is software image management. This is probably the main feature that most people use in Catalyst Center, updating stuff. Some people do the templates, but because if you don't have a programming background, and it doesn't really take that long to learn velocity per se, most people stay away from the templates, which they shouldn't because it's not that hard. From a policy perspective, so I showed this in a video, not a video, a picture. The group-based policy is when you actually do PX grid integration with ICE. This is where you can start coming in here. And now, like I said before, one thing you have to understand about this is when you do this integration, Catalyst Center is now in control of ICE's trust set matrix, right? So if you look at this really, if we go to security groups, so here's our security groups, normal stuff that's in TrustSec. And then I created one right here called safety rule. And when we get to the SDA part, what I did is created a rule where this SGT basically can't talk. If you get this SGT, you can't talk to anybody with this SGT. So anybody with safety rule as the SGT, when they try to talk to each other, the switch is going to block it based on the policy that I created. Now your contracts are basically your SGACLs in ICE, but they just call them contracts here. Again, I'm gonna say marketing because they all, you know how Cisco is. They give something 40 names for the same thing. So in this situation, SGACLs and ICE are called access contracts in Catalyst Center. And then your policy. So again, doesn't this look familiar? This is the TrustSec matrix that's in ICE, right? And right down here, like I said, safety rule, sources on the left, destinations at the top. So if you're coming from or you get the SGT applied to you, if you try to go to something else that has the same safety rule SGT or the SGT basically, it will block it. All right. So safety rule can't talk to safety rule. And you are going to manipulate it in here. Now in ICE, there is a button that you can override the stuff that's in Catalyst Center in ICE, but it kind of doesn't make any sense. If you did this integration, you might as well just keep managing from Catalyst Center. Next, I'm not going to get into all these other ones. We'll do in future videos. And then you got your provision. Now, provisioning is where you're pretty much going to do everything under the sun, right? Now, I haven't installed Stealth Watch, right? I could, but I haven't done it yet because my server is already taxed right now, so I don't want to do that yet. But provisioning is where you're going to do a lot of stuff, right? Your LAN automation, which is not really SD access stuff, but if you want to do greenfield and discover switches, you will use LAN automation to do that. Plug and play. This is your PnP process. This is where you can discover switches and then push policy to them if you wanted to do that. These are already provisioned through my my LAN automation process, so I didn't really have to do anything here. But if you did the PnP process, it would show up as here as unclaimed, and then you just need to claim it. All right. So let's say if I went here, see how it says claim here. If this was a switch that I just put on the network and it got IP address via DHCP, and there's a little option in there that tells it where DNAC is, and then when it shows, you call it DNAC Catalyst Center is, and then when it shows up in Catalyst Center, you just claim it. You can push day 0, day in templates, and then put it in your hierarchy. Now, again, we are not going to get into templates or anything like that in this video. Just bear with me. We will start talking about the PnP process and stuff like that. And then your inventory is pretty much, they have certain views in here. Like I'm in the provision view, but you can change your views here, right? If I go to inventory, this will just show you the inventory stuff. Where is it at from a site perspective? Is it managed? Net authentication failure, whatever. I'll check it out and see what that is. But these are the things that's in the inventory. If I wanted to upgrade it, I could just hit, one of the switches, go to action, and then go to software image update. I don't know why that came up. Image update. Let's try this slowly. Image update, or do a readiness tool to see, hey, is this switch actually ready to be upgraded, or could there be some problems there? Then I did the LAN automation piece, which is, I did this to do the fabric. I just did discovery for here. Now what this is, when it shows up, you can see the last one I did is basically, I use the border node as the seed device, and then I use that to discover everything else. And what it actually did, it went through and it put the preliminary stuff for SDA in there. So basically it did ISIS, and it kind of started positioning the VXLAN stuff and all that good stuff in there. I didn't do BGP because I'm not using BGP EVPN for this fabric. It's all list based. So it's list for the CP, which is control plane, and then the data plane is VXLAN. So I use LAN automation first to discover it and kind of prep the 2 fabric edges. And then when it was time to build the site, I already had the switches in there. And if we go here, You can see that's the seed device, like I said. And then it went from discover first, and it discovers some switches, and then it goes after it discovers the switches. As you can see, it discovered fabric edge 1 and 2. Now these are prefixes that I put in the LAN automation to say, hey, if you find the switch, give it this prefix of fabric edge, and then they put the number in before or after that, and then it provisioned it. Once it's provisioned, that's when I saw it in the site and all that good stuff. Next, we got SD access. Now, I said if you were looking at my post on the community, you'll see that we have the fabric site that I created. So here's a fabric. I just called it whatever. And if you go in here, you will see, my border node is also, it's the CZ border node. CP is control plane node. RP is my rendezvous point because I am running multicast. And then my edge nodes here are my fabric edge, which has the systems pointed to it or plugged into it. Then we have our layer 3 VNNs, which are VRFs here. So we have our corp, guest, and IoT. Now these VRFs they're separate routing tables, so they can't really see each other. If you know anything about, I have videos on manually building BGP EVPN fabrics, pretty much the same concept, just only for campus though. I don't have any layer 2 VNIs. Actually I do. These are created automatically when you create the when you create the associated network. When you start creating it, and I'm gonna have to go through this all over again, but this is for, hey, if I need to talk to something in the same subnet. Then we have our Anycast gateways. This is the gateways that are on every VN. I only have 2, so these are Anycast, right? Now I don't have wireless SSIDs yet because I didn't do anything. I didn't turn on the WLC yet, so I don't have anything there. Then we have our authentication templates. This is where it's going to do the 802.1x configurations. I did close mode here, or close mode. So everything that you would do from a IBNS 2.0 configuration standpoint for switches, Catalyst Center does it for you automatically. So again, at scale. It's all good to know how to do it for people that don't have Catalyst Center and they need to manually know how to configure IBNS 2.0. Great, you need to keep that skill. You got to take an exam. You want to go for your CCIE, you take an exam. You got to know the 802.1x configurations like the back of your head. In the real world, though, if someone has this, you don't have time to do those configurations thousands of times. And before the automation people come after me, yes, you can also do it with Python. Yes, you can do it Ansible Towers and Ansible. You can do all of that. Great. But this is a visual representation of what automation is doing. And for someone that's not coming from a automation background, it's good to do it this way, and then this is dipping your toe into automation. And then go do the other stuff. And then your port assignments. This is where you're just going to assign ports to certain, VLANs, and then the closed mode is going to get applied to it. So that's the fabric side. Now there is a transit in fabric, right? And this transit over here, let me go to VNs. So VNs, I already explained this to you. This is just your VRFs and stuff like that. Now the one thing I did notice when I created this fabric from the old days of Catalyst Center or DNAC is this intra VLAN used to be involved in the transit. Like when you create a transit, it would, or IP transit, because there is an SD access transit. When you create an IP transit to go to the Fusion router, it would create another it would create another interface or BGP peering for the intra, right? What I noticed in this version, and maybe just because this is the VM, or it's just this version, when you create this transit, right, this IP transit, and you configure it for the fabric, it doesn't allow you, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Get back to here. So when I go here in the fabric, and if I go into the border node and I go to configure the fabric right here, or let me go to details. If you notice, it only does the VN networks here. The intra VN is no longer even selectable here. So if I go to configure, and this is for people that know SDA. So don't know SDA, just don't worry about it. When we get to future videos, you'll see what I'm talking about. But when we get to here, you see the number of VNs. If I click on that, the intra VN is not even selectable like it used to be. You used to be able to do this and it would create a BGP peering to the fusion router, and then you can do your redistribution or whatever down. So I don't know if it's this version that I'm using, but I was surprised that I didn't see that, because as a I was like, why is that not there? And you can look at other videos and stuff like that, and they'll show you intra VN. So I don't know why they didn't pair up, but it is what it is. But that's Fabric in a nutshell. Let's see what else we got here. We talked about transit. All this other stuff is basically services that you can add to the Fabric, but most people don't use any of these in the real world, like I said. Now there's some use cases for it, but I haven't really seen too much of people using this stuff. Let me say that. So now we're going to talk about insurance, and this is basically telemetry data, right? Is your Fabric healthy? Is your equipment healthy? So you're going to go to health here. And this basically is going to give you a health score of everything in your environment. Now, when you have a Fabric, it gives you a lot more data. Let me just tell you that, all right? Now, this is the overall stuff. Here's the network, right? And my network health, obviously I only have 2 devices, so nothing there. I don't have any AP, so you're not going to see anything there. And you're going to see the health of the network devices, and you see the overall health score are 10, so it's in green, good to go. If if something was bad, then you would go to issues to see if there's any issues. Now, there's also client stuff that you can see. Now, on this, since I have it integrated with ICE and stuff like that, and getting that information, I would see a lot more data, right? You can see I'm seeing actual data here, like client experience data. And client experience data can tell somebody if there's something going on with the Fabric that's causing a low quality score here. Now, these are the devices that this information is coming from ICE, right? And because I don't actually have Windows devices there, you're only going to see the MAC address, right? Because I have a policy in there that's playing around with MAC addresses that allow it to get on the network. But it gives me the IP address, the health of that device, and the overall trust score is a 6. But I can get it, this is a Mac, it's going to be a 6. If this was actually like ETLS authentication, it'd probably be higher here. But because I have it integrated with ICE, I would see a lot more information. Like if it was a user ID or something like that, I would see the user ID here, right? And then I can click in here and get a lot more information. Now this is the client 360 stuff, which you're going to get more information about the client itself. But again, you can see, the MAC address. Obviously, you don't see the OS. You can see, what device it connected to, what port it connected on, what layer 3 network it's on, what layer 2 VNI that technically it is, but what VLAN basically it is. VLAN 10. That's really all that matters, really. You can get this little, graphic of, okay, I'm connected here. Here's the client. I'm connected to this Fabric node, and here's the Fabric node that I'm actually connected on. You can get a lot more data if this was an actual Windows machine, but I didn't want to overload the box and put a bunch of Windows machines on here. Um, Obviously, you can start seeing more data here. Inputs, receives and transmits, onboarding I passed. Obviously, I went through ICE for that, and then speed, everything. This is again telemetry data. This is the stuff that you're going to use this for when you're not doing SDA. I'm going to keep ramming that in your head. Like, you don't need SDA to get this level of granularity. SDA does help because it gives you more info, but you don't need SDA, right? Because obviously that's going to change your network infrastructure as well. Now, issues, and I'm going to leave this here because all this other stuff and AI analytics, I didn't turn it on, so I'm not going to waste your time with that. So issues and events. This is where you can do this thing called issue hunting, right? Where you can see if something was wrong, even if it fixed itself, right? So you can do time travel here, Let me see if there's any events. So there's P1. What's that? So there's a P1 here. So now if I were to go, and that was right here, and that was what time? 9 o'clock. So if I'd have clicked on that, it would tell me, okay, here's that P1 issue that you had, right? I can go to events and see what kind of events I had. Are there any events here that I know about? Any endpoint events that I know about, right? And then I can go in here, look at the event, let's say client deleted, and get more information, right? Now, do a lot of people, this can help you troubleshoot some issues, but you still need your troubleshooting skills if you got to look at other things, right? Because at the end of the day, Catalyst Center will attempt to fix the issue for you, but at the end of the day, at the very last thing that it's going to tell you is going to say create a attack case. So if it can't figure it out, the last thing is going to tell you to create a attack case. And before you do that, you should do some troubleshooting on your own because you may be able to fix it before you get that attack case. Now, from the tools perspective, the one tool I'm going to show you is Command Runner. So Command Runner basically allows you to go into a device and run a command. So we'll run this right here on all three. And we will go, let me see if they got a show version here. So we're going to do show version. And I'm going to run a command. So now Catalyst Center is going to go into the switch, run this command, and then on the left hand side, or my right hand side, you will see the output of the command. So we got one green, so that was successful. So it was successfully logged into border one. So now we're going to see go attempt. All right, so all three were successful. So now we just go in here, we click the show version, and this shows me exactly what we're doing. It shows me the licensing, all that. And as you can see, I can run it on multiple switches and just go and check, right? And I can export to CLI if I wanted to, right? I can export all three, all that. So this is good for if you wanted to see neighborships, all right? I want to see all the neighborships. All right, show me the neighborships. Oh, neighborships look up, everything's going. Routes didn't go down, so they ain't got nothing to do with us. There's other stuff that you can do. It's not that simple, but it's just an example. What else do we have here? I'm not going to go to Template Hub. Activities, this is just, audit logs so you can see what people are doing or what happened at the time. As you can see, read only command. I just did this one here. So it shows you, and look, it just showed the command I actually did. So it tells me from an audit perspective, hey, this person, which was me, ran this command, show version. So you can always go audit and see who did what, right? Somebody say, "Oh, I didn't run that command. I didn't do that." Well, yes, you did because we got you in the audit log, right? Repudiation. You want to want to minimize that, and then we have our tasks here, which just shows you the tasks that I ran. Some of them failed, some of them didn't, as I was actually getting this all built up and ready to go. So I don't want to make this video too long. That was Catalyst Center in a nutshell. As you can see, I showed you some things where, hey, I showed you a little bit of SDA there because I did build a fabric. And then I showed you some things that you can do without using SDA. So the next time you guys hear Catalyst Center, whether you're the network person, you're the manager, you're the director, you're the C-suite, you need to decouple SDA from Catalyst Center out of your brain. You do not need SDA for you to use or utilize Catalyst Center. Anybody that tells you that, just point them to this video. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, please don't forget to share, comment, like, and subscribe. Now that I got Catalyst Center, it's going to get fun. It's going to be a lot of videos just dropping all the time. Just want to give you a little taste of it now. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Like I said before, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you, and have a nice day.